So deadlifts, the difference here is we do want the load going into the hip. We want Amy to feel that load as she is going down with the exercise, to feel that load posteriorly through her hip. And you can see that quite nicely here. So even though she's had a recent injury and we've got like a 20 kilo load here going through the knee, we're barely bending the knee to form any compressive load through the knee joint and the kneecap. So this exercise, more often than not, is a very comfortable exercise for the person to start on with. All right, and this would be one you could probably be a bit more cheekier with in terms of loading. So you may find that you might be a bit cautious with your squatting loads or your leg press loads early, because the knee is probably a little bit more vulnerable to those compressive loads. But a squat or a hip thruster, they actually can tolerate those loads a little bit more, because there's less load going through the knee joint and more through the hip. So Amy's doing really well there. Technique's perfect. She's got a nice little knee bend that we're after. She's got a nice hip hinge. Can't really fault her on that loading. Now, a progression from here is to now take this into a split stance RDL. So now just just take your left leg back a little bit. We're going to load up your right leg. Yep, perfect. And now we're going to take the same exercise, and we're now just going to load up that right leg a little bit more than her left. All right, now keep going there, Amy. The difference being, if I got Amy to do an arabesque, which is a great exercise, I love arabesques, but I love them because they're more of a balance exercise more than a hamstring strength building exercise. As soon as you put load into a person's hands and you try to do an arabesque, they're going to wobble around and find the exercise so hard. You won't be able to load effectively to get the job done. You need that stability of that back leg to make sure she can adequately load up. You okay there? You need that hamstring stability, you need that back leg stability to make sure she can lift the load comfortably. If you're doing an arabesque here, which is a great exercise, you can see there's more of a balance element to it, okay, and there's going to be more instability. Now, if I got a 20 kilo bar or a 30 kilo bar here, I'll get down here and I'll really struggle to lift that bar up. Now, if I've got that extra bit of support, I've got that stable base to lift the load, I can load up my hamstrings much better off a stable base. Just keep that in mind when you're dishing out your exercises. Arabesques are fine, but they're more of a balance exercise and a neuromuscular control exercise than a hamstring strengthening exercise. Cool. Deads are done. Good job. Now, much like the reason why we have a combination of open chain knee extensions and closed chain quad exercises, we need to take that same approach with hamstrings, because if we're having a surgical graft taken from the semitendinosus, we're now inherently going to have a weakened knee flexor. Now, when you do deadlifts, your body will find a way to use the lateral hamstrings and the stronger glute muscles to do that work. You don't need so much of this medial hamstring group to deadlift, but to hamstring curl, you do. And that's going to be a huge thing that you'll need when you're sprinting and kicking later on in your rehab. So if the surgeon's going to nick a bit of this, we need to toughen up this medial hamstring group as much as we can leading to surgery. So, two very simple things we can do. I'm a huge fan. Obviously, hamstring curls in the gym, both seated or prone, it doesn't matter. We talked about sets and reps and dosages. I don't care what poison you choose, just make sure the loading's appropriate. But if you don't have a seated hamstring curl or a prone hamstring curl, Swiss ball curls are a great option, sliders are a great option, and Nordic. So I'll take you through Swiss ball curls and Nordics in a second, because I think they're really nice exercises to get the job done. Have a seat here for us. Have a lie down here on your back. Now we're going to put your feet up on the ball here, held onto your hands. Now, this is assuming we've got a happy knee and a comfortable knee. If the knee's a bit uncomfortable, we will do simply a chair bridging exercise. I'll just quickly demonstrate here. Just take your feet down. So you want a stable base when the knee's a bit cranky, and you might revert back to this. If they don't love the softness of the ball and the person's curling in and it wobbles around and makes the knee cranky, you might just go back to this version anyway. But I like the curling for the true concentric ability of the exercise. But if the person's not loving that kind of bend and it's getting irritable, we're simply just digging our heels in and lifting your bum up and down. Now, this is not a bad exercise for the hamstrings, but as you can see, the hamstrings actually aren't shortening and lengthening much. Most of the effort is coming through your hip. So your hips are getting strong, your hamstrings are working largely isometrically. They're getting okay loading, but it's not a shortening and lengthening load that we'd love to get, especially if we don't have the machines to do this work. And most physio clinics have got a Swiss ball lying around or two. So here's your kind of regression exercise if things aren't playing the game nicely at the back of the leg. If you do have the Swiss balls, like most of us do in our physio clinics, we're putting our both feet up on the ball, hold onto the floor, we're lifting our bum up from the floor, we're now curling the ball in, okay? Keeping a stable base through our trunk, keeping our hips up high, extending our legs out and curling back in again. Yep. All right, that's good. And we'd start off doing here some two-legged stuff, getting our repetitions up high, up around that sort of nice 12-15 rep range. If that's pretty easy and it's not bothering the person too much, then we start trying to venture into a one-legged version of this if we could. Now the progression would be in with 2, take this leg away and eccentrically let it roll out. Bring this one down, up with 2, yep, bring it in, eccentrically let it roll out. Now, if you're pretty good with that and you're advancing through that, we're going up with 2. So get yourself in that plank position, take this leg away, and we're going to go in and out. Okay? Keep your hips up high. Let's punch out some reps. Yep. So a really nice single leg hamstring loading exercise to work your way through in those first few, this preoperative window. You all right? Getting a good little burner here. Awesome. So that's a hamstring option. If they're just burning through the curls and the bridging and we've got a little bit more time and they're absolutely comfortable to do so, I would start flirting with some Nordics. I'll bring some padding over. You'd be surprised what your patients can do even though they've had an injured ACL. Now, I'll get you to kneel down here. Just see how you feel first. Amy, see how comfortable. Most people are actually surprisingly comfortable to kneel on the knee. Often the load in the knee is often felt through the top of the shin, not actually underneath the kneecap. So most people are pretty comfortable with that. Have a kneel down. Yep. Now, have you done Nordics before? Yep. So if I had the luxury of time, I'd certainly be trying to bring these in just due to their intensity of work. The hamstrings, the Nordic hamstring curl have got great intensity levels at both the medial hamstring group and the lateral hamstring group. So they've got great bang for buck. And if the person can tolerate kneeling and we've got some time to put some eccentric loading, particularly where we want to get it, then we probably can't go too much further than a good old-fashioned Nordic. So we anchor the person's feet down and you're going to slowly work your way down to the ground. Yep, try and fight. Get your hands ready to break your fall. Nice, and then push yourself back to the start. Let's do 3 or 4 here. That's it. Awesome, it's good. You feel okay? Yep. Awesome, so you've got a couple more left. Yep. So this speed in a preoperative period of time is nice. The slow burn, the really nice strong efforts I'm happy with. Later on in rehab, and if we're dealing with someone that's had recurrent hamstring strains, we take a different path, and we won't have time with Amy today, just with the way her knee is. But if we're looking a bit more later stage, and this is just for a conversation for a later stage, the Nordics, the best bang for buck is if you let yourself go out really quickly and put the brakes on late.